Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I'm very happy to host this series that will take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. In this new episode, I'm meeting with Vijay Iyer and Wadada Leo Smith to talk about their new ECM duo album, Defiant Life. We talked about resistance, defiance, the art of the present, artistry, and so much more. This album is called Defiant Life. Is defiance something that guides you as artists? And is it something that should guide artistry?
We kind of, let's say it this way, when I think about defying, I'm thinking about that precious moment that the human being realized that there's nothing more important than trying to set and balance the world in a better place. Okay? And so it's something that we don't control what we do, we administer it because it comes through us in the present moment and is released at the same moment that it appears. So if we look at the two of those practice, both of them try to connect with the highest part of art making practice and the highest part of being human, because one cares. That's the deepest part of it. One cares about making a place not better, just to be better, but making it a wellness of betterness for everybody else, including us. So when we on stage, yes, we are individuals up there as it appears, but actually, we are actually part of this grand expanse of humanism, and we try to express art in that way. You know, that's what I would say in context.
That's right. It's very hard to speak after Mr. Smith because he says it all so succinctly and so clearly. I don't really have much to add to that encapsulation. It's eloquent and so elegantly put. I guess I think about not just what it is to make something in the present, but also what it is to make something for tomorrow. You know, like when we make an album or when we write something down or when we set it, you know, it's like an etching or something that's indelible, that can't be undone, and that then lives on, even lives on beyond our presence. And so that's not just about what he said about making today better, but also about making tomorrow better. And that's the framework that I try to keep in my heart when I'm making anything that might last beyond the present.
You talked about the performance, and you're talking about the moment of recording, and obviously those are two very distinct moments in the artist's life. There's no other choice than being in a moment when you're performing, because it's a moment that you're sharing with the audience. We're together with the space and with the moment as it is. But recording must be really hard if you're someone who's trying to be in the moment, because once it's recorded, once it's on the tape, it's there forever, and it's very different from how it would be if you were playing it 2 seconds later. Is it a difficult moment for you, the studio? Is the studio an experience that is challenging more than being on stage?
He's giving it to me, this one. You know, when I think about this particular album, it feels like a live recording to me, in the sense that, I mean, we took breaks and we listened back to some things, but we didn't undo something. We didn't edit something. We didn't overdub anything. We didn't fix anything. So it is as it happened, this recording. It's a document of us being present. I think our audience was Wadada's grandson, Lamar. He was in the room, and each other. And we were also sort of building the music as it happened. And so there was this discovery process. And so that really feels very similar to how it is when we are in performance. And I think this recording really captures that dynamic really beautifully. And the funny thing about it is that the better you do that job, the less apparent it is to somebody else, you know, in the sense that it becomes more and more seamless, that process, and so that distinction becomes less and less important, I guess.
Does it become seamless the more you play together? Or does it become seamless the more you have conversations around moments where you play together? Or with age? Or like, what?
Well, you see, like we generally, how you say, phrase off activities and moments and things like that. But those are artificial markings. They're not really real. We go to sleep, and yes, we're asleep, and we kind of close the curtain on daylight. But we also have tremendous experience in that moment. And the experience is very close to the one in our wake state. So those curtains are just artificial markings that drop in different places. I like to say that I think in terms of when we think about performance and recording, I like to think about rather recording and live performance. I like to think of both of them as being the same thing, just that they are, in fact, part of the same arc that holds everything together. And believe me, from performance to performance and from recording to recording, there is a kind of a connected tissue that still remains no matter what happens. And we sometimes call it memory and stuff like that, or we call it reflection or stuff like that. But the idea of something has the quality of flexing and bending and never ever quite ending. So recording, you know, we market and push it out just like we do a book. And the book has, let's say, go and check out Mr. Eicher, who's sitting on his lemon porridge. Okay, that's kind of a paraphrase of some line in Finnegan's Wake. Okay, about the lemon house or something like that. Okay, but what is being revealed is just a door. You see, the record is a door, the performance is a door, and Finnegan's Wake is a door.
But are people pushing the door, or?
They're supposed to do that.
Yeah, they're supposed
but
to.
But they
do
don't.
That. Yeah, exactly.
The reason they don't because they think the novel is it,
That's
and they
what
think
I'm
the
saying.
record is it.
That's why I'm asking. It's
They're
just
not
like,
it.
So how to make people push the door?
Well, you can't make them do it, you see, because that's the problem with living on Earth. Everybody feels cool with how they are, but they have to do the research, and most people are lazy. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a practical way. You know, I mean, it's difficult to understand exactly what's being said in the work of art unless you actually go inside that work.
But understanding is overrated anyway.
Well, you feel what's in there.
Yeah.
You see, because if you go inside these clouds here, for example, you're supposed to actually generate that sensation.
Yeah, it's about feelings, but you're right. There's also something generational where the laziness of pushing the door and just getting a little curious about those feelings.
Yes.
Unknown
it's harder
feelings.
now, though.
Yeah.
Your generation was less harder. My generation was more harder.
Yeah.
Because, for example, we didn't have toys coming up. Okay, I came up in Mississippi. We didn't have toys. We made toys. We made them out of wire and wood and whatever. We made them. So the whole notion about how you think about what is in this stuff that we live in is so different now.
You're talking in the booklet, in your conversation between you two, you're talking about fixing stuff,
Yes, yeah,
which
yeah.
made me think of breaking stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, when you fix stuff,
yeah,
you break it
yeah.
because it's already fixed.
So it's not your job to fix it.
No, and nobody's job to fix it. We're supposed to observe and experience it and see what's there.
So it basically is just an invitation to creativity and openness, but it's everyone's own decision to push the door or not, which is very generous, because if you think about it, you could be like, oh no, that's my job. I want everyone to push the door. I'm working hard to offer something behind the door. You could at least push the door, but you're graceful enough, both of you, to decide to just, here's a door. You do whatever you want with it. So that's pretty generous, and it's rare. That makes me connect the dots about still the idea, the concept, the notion of defiance, because if we keep this metaphor of the door, there's like, defiance is also acknowledge that there's a door, but decided that no matter what, we're going to push it to just understand what's behind. And I was talking about resistance earlier, but is it the same thing, resistance and defiance?
Well, they are definitely connected. Yeah. Defiant is the quality of thinking about knowing what you have to do and doing it at every expense. Resistance can come in all kinds of ways. Resistance can be, like, for example, Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yeah.
She did that many times before. She had refused to give her seat up, and nothing happened. Mm-hmm. But that particular moment when she decided not to give up her seat, something happened. They arrested her. You see how that golden moment presented itself? She was an activist long before Dr. Martin Luther King or any of those other great social warriors came along. So that right there is both a defiant moment and also a moment of resistance. So resistance have to have force against it for it to be magnified.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about resistant figures. And obviously I want to talk about Patrice Lumumba and Raphaël Harrer. 2 tracks of the album are dedicated to those people who are resistant, immense resistant, people who just represent defiance also. Can we say a few words about those 2 people?
Sure. I think the theme of not just defiance, but defiant living and defiant livingness or defiant life pervades all of the pieces on this recording. It was, it was very much on our minds and in our hearts at the time, and still, but certainly at the time that we recorded it, the unbearable revelations day by day about what's happening in the world, and also our studies of the interconnectedness of it all, these different decolonial struggles, the long-standing battle between the West, what's called the West, and what's called the global South, and also our relationship to that battle, to that struggle, both of our relationships to it, our individual relationships to it, myself as the child of immigrants from a formerly colonized place, and what's their relationship to that history of imperialism, what's my relationship to it, and then Mr. Smith with his heritage and his relationship to the American South. And then also the larger consciousness that links these fates, when we pay attention to the larger history of the 20th century and the decolonial struggles that unfolded in the middle of the 20th century and how they related to the civil rights movement, right? Someone like Dr. King was paying attention to the actions of someone like Gandhi, and Malcolm X was paying attention to the caste struggle in South Asia and also to the struggle in Palestine, and to, so there's all these different connections that link, Black American history, to an international consciousness about, defiance and justice. And so thinking about, someone like Patrice Lumumba in connection to that history, and also thinking about Manfred Eicher, who was a poet and scholar who was killed in December of 2023 in Palestine, and his family was killed as well. That all of this is connected. And I think the theme of Defiant Life had to do with surviving, enduring, and not resilience, but steadfastness is the term that Palestinians use. Resilience is a bit of a misleading term because it sort of insinuates that the oppressed should just bounce back.
There's some forgiveness also in resilience that is like not really the point here.
Exactly,
We're
yeah.
more talking about perseverance.
Yeah.
Not just like that's
And
the concept of Sumud too. That's one of the titles. But
that's right, yes. Yeah, and so that sense of living on in defiance of this global order that's been imposed, that's the kind of theme that I think gets picked up in different ways in every piece on this album. And certainly with these dedications, that sort of anchors it. I think they become like structural. If we think of the whole album as a suite, then those two segments, Floating River Requiem for Lumumba and Kite, for Rafat Alarir, become like tent poles in a way. The third and fifth tracks, is that right?
Yeah.
So they give us it very much in the sense of how Wadada has created these cycles of work where there are moments, there are, small movements, for example, or, movements in 10 Freedom Summers, for example, that focus in on one individual in one moment in their life, for example. Like Medgar Evers, I think of that piece as a vivid example of the moment just before he was assassinated, those, 20 odd seconds. So there's this way of using these moments or tableaus as opportunities for reflection and meditation on how that connects to a much larger story.
You're mentioning the concept of channeling a historical moment in the liner notes in your conversation in the booklet of the album, and I found it interesting because it's hard to channel a moment that's gone, but also that's exactly what you're talking about here. It's not just a tribute or just putting a name on a track. It's about being there then with this person at the exact moment where you're playing this music. And you were talking about the sequencing, and I want to say a few words about that because it's a suite. So the sequence on the album is the way it was played in the studio in Lugano for you, from A to Z?
We were actually making the order as we recorded. So I remember when we were in the studio that we recorded what we first called a vignette, which became the opening, the first piece, Prelude Survival. And we also recorded what became Sumud. And Manfred had a very clear sense like, these two pieces should open the album. This is a very mysterious and elegant way to open the album. It invites the listener in a way that I remember when we were discussing the sequence for Compassion, that maybe it was uneasy. Yeah, he suggested opening with this one piece because he said it gave it more elasticity.
That wasn't easy, I remember.
And I thought that was such a unique way to put it.
Yeah.
But I understood in retrospect what that does is that we use this image of the door.
Yeah.
And of course, people have so many doors nowadays. Like there's so many different things to engage with, different kinds of experiences online and offline, and mostly online, apparently, through devices and so on. And how do you invite people into a space? Like how do you ask someone to step through this door, and if they experience the first few seconds and want to hear more, want to know more, or want to feel more, again, not to understand it, but just to feel like it's a space for them.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's kind of how it worked with the sequence, is that each one led into the next in this particular way.
Yeah.
I wanted just to say something about Patrice Lumumba. The Floating River Requiem is it's a way of celebrating his thoughtfulness about the future, even though he didn't extend into the future.
Patrice Lumumba was the prime minister of the République
For
Démocratique
a short
du Congo.
while, just a very short while, because
Just
because the
putting that in
the
context.
Western world, that is the American government and the rest of Europe, decided that he shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And essentially, he did he made the right choice, which is a moment of defiance. He nationalized all the wealth and all the property within the country. That's never been done by anybody else before or after him there. Okay. And that was a way of thinking about the continent as a whole, as opposed to just the Republic of the Congo. And so in that floating river, I made it floating in the sky and as deep as from Earth to essential space is floating, okay? And not only is it floating, but the requiem itself is also floating with the flow, okay? And deep inside of that requiem is a sanctuary. And that sanctuary could be called a sanctuary of hope or expectation or something that one day be realized. But the image is that because he understood what the continent needed, that is reverberating and will reverberate forever until that claim is made and actually brought to fruition. And so the Requiem is really, it's about the so-called future. I happen to think that past, present, and future is all one thing, it's the present. It's just got artificial markings that it's there and it's over there. You see, because it's constantly moving.
That
It's
is
constantly
interesting.
shaking.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're saying that. Sorry to interrupt, but it just makes me think that when I listen to this album, I don't picture something that I enter and then I explore. This is not how I feel. Personally, I don't know if it's anyone else, but I see a whole. I see it's like an opera. It's like a landscape. I don't know how to say, but it's not a journey. It's a whole thing. That's exactly what you're talking about here. It's just about past, present, future is not really the point, because all of this is just how we welcome it in the moment.
Yes.
And maybe that's just, again, I'm not an artist, but maybe there's something about that is very the essence of art also, which is just like a key to comprehend the moment.
Or to discover the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, comprehend is not the right word, but just
No,
like
discover is
discover the moment, and just it's just another pair of glasses on your nose, basically.
yeah, or let's say the throbbing of the heart that makes you realize that truth is just like everyday glass of water.
Yeah.
It's us. We are the truth.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah. Me too.
Every single species or every single something
you're right.
in creation, that's all of us. You say, we're made exactly like the stuff that's in the Grand Nebula. Our bodies are made out of that. Mm-hmm. We don't even know that.
Yeah.
And we go around saying that we're one something and we're one something. It's just all artificial markings that we take for real. And that's what the grand illusion is about.
Yeah.
Erasing the veil. Discover it. So
I
that
mean, we're
that,
not-
that that grand suite, it's an invitation. It's a door. It's 7 pieces. We can mark any one of them and float straight through all of them, or we can go individually, step by step through all of them. Whatever portion that we take out from it, it's the same all over.
Through this lens, I want to talk about the experience of the duo. You've both been playing and forever, and you're gonna play more with like different group of people. But the duo is very special. There is a conversation, but it's not just back and forth. Is it the most obvious way to communicate as musicians for you, the duo form? Like, talk to me about your experience as artists who play duo for this project.
I'd like to ask Vijay, do you remember our first duo? And I don't mean as a duo, but our very first duo.
Our first duo that I remember was in 2005 in the context of a quartet concert.
Yes.
It was.
There you go.
That's right, and that's why.
Oh my gosh. No. That's the truth.
That's right. It may.
Let me say
Was it in
what.
Paris? Was it that one?
It was in Paris. What happened? What happened was this: when the ensemble breaks down, and invariably it does, because making art is messy and uncontrollable, and cannot really be gauged until after it's over. I'm talking about the makers of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it breaks down, I look to find the spark that's gonna make it continue. And I would walk over close to VJ and just start playing, and we would go somewhere else.
That's right. In the liner note, I mentioned something called an aesthetic of necessity.
Aesthetic of necessity, yes.
And that wasn't just a made up phrase. It was actually like how it has always felt every time we've played, just the two of us. And it started, like you say, in moments like that, kind of a moment of crisis.
Yes.
Or of a kind of breakdown where we had to create a way forward. We didn't have a choice. In fact, we had to. Like, we had to do it because we had an accountability to an audience that it was there with us, you know. And it is true that making art is messy. It's also true that Mr. Smith's music is hard. It was easy to get lost, I think, but I think because I was reading from the score, I had a sense of like, okay, I think he's here, so so I could align with him, but also I think I just was willing to take the step of offering something that wasn't there that might function in relation to what he was offering.
Yeah.
And so it was this way of jointly taking step by step as a kind of offering, and as he once put it, merging with each other or relating to each other through contrast, but basically having a compositional sensibility in those moments of crisis that then builds us the next bridge to the next episode or something. And then those bridges became their own episodes, you know.
They were completely new bridges. Right. They wasn't part of the fabric of what we were doing, which makes it even more beautiful.
So that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
And how have things evolved in 20 years?
Let me say it this way. One of the most spectacular moments of our duet happened, I believe it was 2019, but it could have been 2018 because I'm not a good calculator of numbers, okay? But we did 9 concerts in 9 different countries in 11 days. And every one of those concerts, every one of them was more precious than the Big Bang. How about that? And what I mean by precious, we discovered more ways in which to make the music flow. And we never had to figure out if it was successful because we knew it was. One spectacular moment was at the in Berlin when we was in that round space.
Yes.
We decided that we were gonna, at the end of the concert, we said a few things and bowed, and then we decided we'd do like the Matadors do. We walked completely around it, and as we walked around it, everybody was standing up and kind of like really into it. That's what I mean by that moment of it's larger than the Big Bang, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think earlier you asked if it has evolved or become more refined in these decades. And I guess I would say that it doesn't feel necessary to think on those terms. I mean, I think often of one of the many jewel-like utterances from Wadada that he said to me once. He said, Vijay, you and I have known each other for many lifetimes. And so in this lifetime, it doesn't feel like a matter of developing. It actually just feels like a continuation of something. And that even that first duo moment that he referred to from Paris, and this was probably documented.
It is documented.
There's a film called Eclipse that was made
Exactly.
of our first concert together with that group. And even then, it felt like home. It felt like a kind of sanctuary, like he said. It felt like a place we belonged in.
Vijay Iyer and Wadada Smith about their new album, Defiant Life. Thank you for joining, choosing, and listening to our ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I look forward to sharing more music with you in the next episode.